Hello, viewers. It's such an opportunity to come your way again, once again, um, to share with you an experience tonight from a young, amazing man who has actually taken the world by storm. I'm so happy tonight um, to interview him. This young man that I'm about to interview, is a a renowned visual artist who has actually put Africa back on the map. And not only that, he's also the 73rd most influential personality in Africa. And what even thrills me about this man is after selling one of his artworks, he didn't just keep the proceeds to himself, but then he just thought it wise to make a difference, in the lives of children. And what actually gravitated me towards this amazing man is the fact that he just allows kids' imagination runs wild. And tonight, I'm so humbled to interview our own Ibrahim Mahama. So let's welcome Ibrahim, onto the Inside View. So Ibrahim, and welcome to the Inside View tonight.
Thank you very much, Nana. I hope
Yeah.
all is good in London, in the
Yes.
UK.
Yes. I mean, we can't complain at all. We are in summer, but it looks like the sun, is just trying to just misbehave. I mean, it's been raining and all sorts. But I would say today it's been awesome. I mean, not too hot and not too windy as usual, but then it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, I would say that you should forgive me because, as usual,
Okay.
we have a lot of, renowned,
Yeah.
Ibrahim Mahama is, high-profile people, also named Ibrahim Mahama. So, for the purposes of tonight's discussion, and also for people who are not too much into art, just like you, we just want to know who Ibrahim Mahama is. So, if you could actually just give us a little background about yourself, please, who Ibrahim Mahama is.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. My name is actually Mohammed Ibrahim Mahama. I
Okay.
mostly don't use the Mohammed in my name these days, but in my official document, it's Mohammed. So Mohammed is my first name. Ibrahim
Okay.
Mahama is my father's name. So I prefer using that because it's much simpler to travel with. Um, I was born in Tamale in 87, but I was raised in Accra. I studied in various schools in Accra, and I went to Koforidua to high school to Pope John Seminary, where I studied visual arts from 2002 to 2005. And afterwards, I decided to read a fine arts program at the university, at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and
Mhm.
Technology. So that was between 2006 to 2010. And I decided to go back and do my master's and PhD. So that lasted between 2011 till date. Yeah. So basically, I've been working around the arts for since I was in high school.
Wow. Wow. You know, And before we go on, I would just urge viewers to invite as many people as you can and to tune in because um, our visual artist is in town and it will not be fair if I just keep this conversation to myself. So if we can invite people, to tune in, to learn from Ibrahim tonight, especially our young, children, so that we can emulate, his, footsteps and also try and aspire higher as well. So for tonight, wherever you're watching me from, please um, urge your young children to come around and also just invite our loved ones, anybody around, to come in and listen to Ibrahim. Yeah. And also, for tonight, we just want to, I'll say, explore the concepts, and also, the thought processes behind your artwork. So, viewers know that when you talk about, like about Mahama or like Ibrahim Mahama, everybody thinks, oh, he's from a rich family. Everything was just given to you on a silver platter. So I'll say that on tonight's episode, we are just going to also explore how you started from nothing, but then you've managed to be the big man that you are. Yeah, also. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, we need to know as well. Ibrahim, I mean, now that you've told us who you are, um, I will say that I think during my research, and it was actually so clarified it that you were born in Tamale, but then you lived in Accra. So, how did your formative years um, in Accra, shaped and influence your work and also your life? I mean, how? Because um, you've gone back to Tamale, but then here you are, actually, you grew up in Tamale.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, nah.
Yes, in Accra. So,
Yeah.
how did, those formative years help influence your artwork?
Okay. I at the age of 5, I was sent to a boarding school in Accra.
Five
Um,
years.
yeah, at the age of 5. So it was quite interesting. Yeah. Well, I there were two boarding schools. There was Prince Martin Memorial School in Sawam,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on I went to St. John's Preparatory, and I was there actually with my siblings. I come from a very big family. I come from a polygamous family. So my father has 4 wives. So growing up, we met a lot of children, and those of us who were in Accra, all of us were in boarding school. Of course, my sister and I, the one I come after, we were sent to a different boarding school later, St. John's, and we were there for 6 years before I went to junior high. So within that 6 years when I was in the school, there was I didn't really have so much love for the school actually because I didn't understand why at the age of 5 I had been sent to a boarding school.
That's okay, viewers.
School.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, it's back now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it goes off, and I'm not sure whether you can still hear me or not.
It's okay. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. So in the boarding school, actually, okay. Yeah. So in the boarding school, I developed a lot of love for drawing because it really kept me at peace whilst I
Mhm.
was there when I was young. So when I had the chance to choose what to do in high school, yeah, my parents thought doing art would be quite good because
Mhm.
they thought that I had promise in it. So, and also coming from a family where everything, it was so big that we used to share everything, because when you come from a big family where your cousins, brothers, sisters, like there's actually no difference. So
Mhm.
it's not a small family where everything is centered on one child. So I grew up with that idea that everything that you had to share it.
Mhm.
So it really helped me to be able to decide the form that my practice was going to take once I
Okay.
decided I was going to become an artist.
Mm. Wow. So, I mean, why is it necessary that you've still maintained connection with your roots and gone back, and to practice from? Because one would have thought that after growing up in Accra and you schooled, in Accra. in Sawim, and also yeah, in the eastern region as well. Why have you thought it wise to still maintain connection with your roots?
Yes. Well, my father and most of the family actually lives in the north, and
Okay,
since I was a child, I always paid visits to Tamale.
okay,
My heart is very much here. In art school, we studied capital and also like the politics of redistribution of wealth and a lot of different things. So I was very much interested in the idea of me coming back to the north to be able to make some kind of contribution, particularly even just an it's a little idea as coming here to build a studio would be enough to even inspire children who
mhm,
probably want to become artists, but maybe there's no role model for them to look at. So for me, it was always in the idea of the North was always in my heart, though I grew up in the South. So
mhm.
when I finished my master's in 2013 and I had the opportunity, I didn't think twice about it. I just went straight for it.
Well, so did you have any doubts? Because we all know that art. When any child tells the parents, I want to study art," every parent thinks, especially our most African parents, they sort of
Yeah.
frown. Arts, saying, you know what I mean. I mean, you can do medicine, you
Yes.
can read, law, you can read, engineering. I mean, all these lucrative courses, and here you are, pursuing art, and not just for the first degree. You read, you know, your master's also in arts, and then as if that wasn't enough, you went into PhD also in arts. What was actually going through your mind, and how did your parents actually receive it when you told them that you want to pursue arts? I mean, how was it received?
Yeah, my father was actually very supportive. My family, I've been very lucky. I think it's my family that has actually helped me because ever since I told them I wanted to take art seriously, they've always
Mm-hmm.
been very supportive throughout high school till uni. And there are people who their parents are not interested in they studying art, and
Yeah.
even when they do, they don't. They never want their parents to see anything of what they do because when they see it, it gets them irritated. But for me, my family was always quite interested in seeing whatever I had done, and they were very proud. My father would show my drawings to his friends because my father studied architecture and planning in the university, but he also realized that art was very important. And to be able to allow your child to explore what he likes, you never know what is going to come out or emerge
Yeah.
out of it. So my father, that was always his philosophy, that just let your children follow their heart and let's see what comes out of it. So as I kept exploring and he
Mm-hmm.
kept seeing that there was more promise in it, sometimes he wouldn't they never really understood what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
but they always said, oh, let's see what comes of it, let's see what comes. I think it's an attitude that parents need to develop. Even
Mm-hmm.
if you don't understand what your child wants to do or become, just be patient. After all, it's their life. They are going to live this for the rest of their lives. If you force yeah, if you force them to do something which they don't love, they're going to be most of the time they're going to be miserable the rest of their lives. So I guess no one has time to deal with the consequences of misery in my family from another person, so they just let you do whatever you want. If it doesn't work, that's your own problem.
That's amazing. Okay, now that you've told us that at least your father, was an architect, and
Yeah.
you went into, art as a form of escape. But then what led you down, the path of art? And who and what inspired you to pursue art?
Well, I when I went to art school, like any other person, I just went to explore. Yeah, I had some talent and I wanted to, everyone wants to become an artist once you are creative and all that,
Mm,
but you never really know exactly what type of artist you want to become. It's through the pursuit of the practice when you're experimenting in the studio, when you're traveling, when you're talking to friends, when you're reading books here and there. sitting in classes, learning about art history and all that. At some
Mm-hmm.
point, you come to realize that you have maybe a specific interest. You might not, you thought you wanted to draw so much, but at some point you realize that, no, maybe I'm not so much interested in drawing human beings anymore. I actually want to look for materials in the market and put together to make some kind of an art form,
Mm-hmm.
because art is so broad. And most times, with the mistake that parents make is that when they hear art, all they think is that, oh, the people who draw by the side of the road, or the people who just draw. But art is not about, it's not only about drawing. The kind of work that I do these days, where I have bought old airplanes and transformed them into classrooms, or where I have built this red clay SCCA, bought the old silo and revive. All these are artistic forms. In contemporary art and in art itself, freedom, there are different levels of freedom, and freedom is the very basis of art. The fact
Mm-hmm.
that an artist decides that he's going to create something which has never existed before,
Mm-hmm.
that's when art becomes interesting. So there's a certain sense of radicality in art. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So art starts with a certain sense of radicality. So I'm very much interested in these radical ideas and thoughts, and how that pushes an artist to be able to create something new for the world to experience. We don't make art because we know art already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, art is not necessarily what exists. Art is what is yet to become. So if someone goes to art school, he's not going to art school to become the artist that everyone is familiar with. He's going to
Okay.
become his own artist, to create his own kind of work that the
Mm-hmm.
world will now look at and say, oh, there's a new artist in town and
Mm-hmm.
he's doing something that we've never seen before. That's when art that's when art gets a value. That's when an artist's work gets a value. If you're doing what everyone is doing already, then we have no need to look at your work.
Yeah.
So that's what people don't understand when they look at art, or when their children look at art. They think that art is something that is necessarily for everyone to do. Art is something that is for everyone to experience.
Hello, viewers. Okay. Are you okay, Ibrahim? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Good.
Sorry,
No, no,
our
that's okay.
internet
I
is
mean,
very
um,
embarrassing.
we all know, about our network, so that's fine. So where were we? We were talking about your art, but it looks like your artwork is out of this world. You know what I mean? The things that you can come up with, and I am thinking, especially in Ghana and for that matter, Africa, you are way ahead in terms of how your artworks, is. So now my question is, between the time of conception and actualization, how do you hold on to, that reality that, you know, um, outsiders might not see or understand, but then in you, you think this is possible. I can foresee this happening. How do you hold on to, that reality? I mean, how do you hold on to that? Because I mean, for us, we see your artworks, and it's, I would say, like to the ordinary person, it doesn't make sense, especially if you are to communicate, the inception of what you have in your mind. So how do you hold on to that reality from the conception and the actualization of your ideas? How do you do it? Because obviously,
Yeah,
the moment you want to say, oh, like you're not too sure whether this artwork that you're talking about, will be possible. So how do you make it happen? How do you do it?
yeah. Art has always been about the idea of exploring the idea of the unknown or the impossible.
Okay.
Art is more or less about exploring potentials, yeah, unrealized potentials, or unseen potentials.
Mm.
You know, if it was that easy, everyone would have been an artist. And also, it's not just within the visual arts. It's also just when it comes to artistic expressions, particularly when it comes to many things like art, engineering, or architecture, or anything, because in most times there are people who want to do things that their world is already familiar with because it's easy and we already know how it plays out. But if you're an artist and you have an idea and the idea seems heavy or it seems impossible, that's when art becomes interesting because you want to devise or you want to create a system that allows for that idea to come into reality. In 2010, when I was finishing undergrad, at the time, that's when I had this idea to build these spaces in Tamale, but I couldn't realize it within the period. It took me more than 4 years before I could even gather the courage to start. And after I started, then it took another 5 years for the idea to be realized. Now, when we have the kids inside the airplanes, when we are teaching them drone tech in it, or we're doing workshops within our spaces, or when I'm producing my artwork in my studio in Tamale, 10 years ago, I would have never imagined that it would have come to pass. But I guess it's more or less about patience because once you conceive of an idea, and an artist is always a visionary because you have imagined or foreseen something that
Yeah.
most people around you haven't seen. So if you're going to listen to what people tell you, because people, when you discuss your ideas with people, say, "Oh, but this thing is not possible, or it's difficult, or
Yeah.
in our society we don't do these kind of things." But there is nothing such as that. You can't practice art with a bit of conservatism. It just will not work. You just have to let your mind go, and you have to believe that nothing is going to go to waste.
Okay.
Every idea that you conceive of, at least that starts with responsibility. That starts with responsibility. With that, if the idea is the ethics around the idea and everything works out, why not try it? Because at the end of the day, the world needs a lot of good things to happen. So if you conceive an idea and you think that it's going to be very difficult to realize, you just have to be patient and you have to work through it and build a system that would allow that idea to manifest, because you never know who will see it, who it will inspire, and how it will somehow turn the art world in itself around, or even the world in itself around.
But then, do you think, like for our generation, do you think we are patient enough? Especially because talking about your artworks, you could tell that it's taking, I would say 10 years for you to get to where you are now. So do you think, especially the youth, do you think we are patient enough to hold on to our dreams? Do you think we are patient enough? Because it looks like everybody now
No,
is um
yeah.
like, do you think we are patient enough?
No, I don't think people are patient so much these days. The world is so fast also with the technologies that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone, because people see things so quickly. And
Yeah.
back in the days when there wasn't social media or anything like that, when anything happened, information used to take long to travel. But
Yeah.
these days, everything is happening in real time. So
Yeah.
people can see that someone is making a lot of money in real time, that someone is becoming successful in this amount of time, short time, real time.
Yeah.
So no one really has the time to wait anymore. But for me, I think that when you develop an attitude of an artist, even when you are not an artist, when you're an
Mm-hmm.
engineer or a doctor or anything, it allows you the time to pause, to
Mm-hmm.
be patient, and to reflect on everything that you do and allow it time for it to grow. The attitude of the artist is very important. When I engage with young people, I'm not engaging with them because I want every one of them to become an artist. But I
Okay.
think that when they learn the attitude of the artist, it might help them in whatever they do with their lives going forward.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, now talking about that, how did you carve out this niche with your focus on capitalism, migration, labor, conditions, and also globalization? Because most of your artworks are, things that are so, controversial that no one wants to talk about. But then you are so bold that through your artwork, you bring the message across. How did you carve out, this niche? What really inspires you to communicate, like to the world through your artworks? Can you hear me, Ibrahim? Are you okay? Can you hear me? Sorry about that, viewers. And um, our guest is sorting out his network, and he will be with us shortly. In the meantime, we'll see a bit of his artwork. So if the technical team can just Ibrahim, are you back? I've got a few comments here. One from Kofi Tiahini that says we need to walk step by step to develop what God has given to us. So these are a few comments coming up, and it shows that people are really listening to what Muhammad and Ibrahim Mahama is saying to us. So Ibrahim, if you can hear me,
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So did you get to did you get to hear my question, or do you want me to just
I heard some of it. I
yeah, me
heard
too.
some of it. Yeah.
Okay, so do you want me to actually ask again? Do you want me to
Yeah.
ask
If you
again?
can just, yes, ask it again. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just asking, like in the climate of where, like people are not patient to, pursue their dreams or their goals. How did you, carve out this niche? Like with your focus on capitalism, migration, labor conditions, and also globalization, because your artworks are so profound and so pivotal. I would say it talks about sensitive issues that no one wants to talk about, but then you manage to communicate to the world through your artwork. So, how did you carve out this niche, and what motivated you to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So to begin with, when I was studying in art school,
Mm.
I was very much interested in experimentation, like trying to find forms, like
Mm-hmm.
creating work that would somehow open the experience of art within the landscape. In 2012, I started collecting these jute sack materials in the market spaces in around Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, and all that. These are the cocoa bags which have been brought in from India and Bangladesh, and
Mm-hmm.
mostly used to transport charcoal, cocoa first of all. Then, secondly, it's used in transporting onions, maize, millet, other things, and eventually charcoal. I'm
Mm.
interested in the systems that are embodied within this. Back in the 60s, Kwame Nkrumah created was trying to build these massive industries like the
Yeah.
cocoa processing company,
Mm.
the silos
Yes.
and all, actually for food storage and food security, blah blah blah. But when the coup happened in '66, a lot of these buildings were abandoned.
Mm.
So I'm interested in like our current material conditions within like the 21st century and how that is somehow connected to this timeline from 66 because Kwame Nkrumah was trying to build spaces that would help Ghana to be able to attain economic independence and the continent at large, but that didn't happen. So almost 60 years down the line as an artist, I am asking certain questions through the materials that we see around us.
Mm.
Also, when you go to Accra and Kumasi, when you go to Accra, Kumasi, and other places, you'll find that there are a lot of kayayes. That's a lot of northern girls, young girls from the north who've migrated to the south to do all these odd jobs. So I'm interested in the conditions that they go through and how that is represented in the everyday things that we use, but we don't really pay attention to.
Mm.
So the charcoal sack, for instance, the way that is torn, the women when they sell the charcoal in the market, sometimes they patch the cloth They
Yeah.
patch the bag with pieces of their cloth.
Mm-hmm.
When the bag is bagged in the when the charcoal is bagged in the forest, in the upper east and upper west areas in the northern region, sometimes they also stitch it up with like bags of trees and all that. So I thought that the bag, after some point,
Mm.
became almost like a body, a flesh, or a living thing in itself. So I somehow wanted to bring together this material that had somehow lived through like the ordinary spaces
Mm.
that I thought that contained the politics of the body, because art is political and the materials that we see around us are also very political. Art is political and the materials that we see around us are also very political. But in our everyday today, we never really have time to pause and reflect upon the things around us. Because the world is so fast, when you're using something and it's going bad, or when it's getting old, we are always encouraged to buy new things. So people like to throw things away. But
Away.
I'm interested in something when it's old, because I think that when that thing is old and it's being discarded, at that point it even has more life than when it was new, because you can trace different histories within it and all that, and all those histories that come with it reflect the political conditions within a given time or within history. So for me it became easy to not so easy though, but easy as an idea to work with, but difficult as in trying to negotiate with people to
Mm.
collect materials to put together to create these large monumental installations around the world.
That's amazing. So, as a visual artist, what goes through your mind? Because I'm not an artist, so obviously, when I see space and stuff like that, I'm the only thing that will come into my mind. Oh, I wish maybe I had money, maybe to build a mansion or something like that. But from a visual artist point of view, what goes through your mind, especially, from somebody who's traveled a lot? What collection do you pick when you travel? Like, I'm not talking, in terms of material things, but in terms of ideas, because I know you had, an opportunity to study in Germany. And because of that, you were privy to travel to most parts of the world. I, can you hear me, Ibrahim? Ibrahim will be with us shortly. Our network is playing up, but um, it, yeah, we'll be sorted. Are you back, Ibrahim? It's okay. We understand. Yeah, that's
We
okay.
officially have to denounce all the internet companies in Ghana.
Certainly, yeah. Wow. you know,
Yeah.
um, I'll say, before the network actually started playing, I was just asking, what goes through your mind, as a visual artist? Because, some of us that are not into art, when we travel, we just admire nature and whatever, and that's it, it ends there. But for somebody who is well traveled, what kind of collections do you carry with you when you go back, to Ghana? And especially, for somebody who had the opportunity to study in Germany and also, had the opportunity also to travel around the whole world, what kind of things do you carry with you when you go back home and you sit behind your desk to think? What goes through your mind?
Yeah, sorry, I lost a part of the question. Yeah, but I got the first part. You asked what goes through my mind as an artist and what keeps me at home, actually. Was that a
No,
question?
no. What I was asking was, as a visual artist,
Yeah.
what goes through your mind when, like when you travel?
Yes.
What are some of the things that you carry with you, yeah, like when you go back home? Because, those of us not I would say that, and some of us that are not into art, we just admire nature and it just ends there. We don't do anything with, actually with it. But somebody, from a visual artist point of view, what are some of the things that you look out for when you just go out for, sightseeing? I mean, what do you, carry with you when you come back to Ghana? What are some of the things that you think it can help shape, the mindset of our children? Like, what are some of the things that you look
Okay.
for?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, can you hear me?
Yes, 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 I can hear you now. Wow. Our internet is really playing up, especially from Mr. Ibrahim's side. But this interview will still go on. And I do apologize for this. And thank you so far, for your patience. Um,
Hello.
oh, hi. We have all the patience
Yes.
for you, so don't worry, Ibrahim.
Yes.
We have all the patience for you,
Yeah.
so don't worry at all.
Yeah. So I was just saying that it's keeping an open mind. For me has always been very important. The fact that when you're traveling and you see and experience things, you think about that in relation to home, and you ask yourself, how can we build upon things like this? Because also sometimes when, particularly when you're traveling in the West, one of the things that we also have to realize is that because they've been able to do so much, they are at a very different level now. There are a lot of things that they have actually come to not a almost I guess sometimes it almost seems sometimes that they've almost hit the wall, particularly when it comes to some ways of life and all that. So for me particularly, I'm always thinking about how we can reflect upon these things as we travel, and how we can borrow ideas for home. Like for instance, I travel and I go to museums and spaces all the time, so I'm always looking out for how can that help me to rethink about the projects I'm working on at home, and how can I create better experiences for young people who are coming up from this place that we call home, Ghana. Yeah. So for me, it's very important that as we travel, we try as much as possible to carry the good things that we see and see how that can also be redistributed back in the spaces that we come from.
Oh, okay, and that's amazing. Now let's talk about your 1 million, um, dollar or whatever, money, and also the fact that you didn't keep this money to yourself, because as a young man, you would have thought, oh, okay, maybe I could have bought mansions, bought cars, and everything, but then you decided to think about the children from where you hail from, and to change their lives, and also to do something out of this world. Can you share, at that time that you had this money sitting in your account, why didn't you, it's good that you've invested in where you are and everything. I mean, it's so amazing. But what was the inspiration behind, this idea of trying to help the children in Tamale? And for that matter, I'll say all the children in Ghana.
Yeah.
Why? Yes.
Yeah. It's
Why did
it's
you
always.
decide to invest in planes and all this stuff? Because the planes. To an ordinary person, it doesn't make sense because planes, 6 planes. 6 aircrafts
Yes.
and doing amazing stuff, in the plane. Why the plane? I mean, I know you're doing so much, the SCCA. I mean, which
Yes.
we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But the 6 airplanes or the 6 aircrafts, can you please talk about? I mean, what made you think, oh, okay, let me just do something for these children? I mean, why? Why the 6 aircrafts?
Well, it's there are many reasons to it. One, because I've always been interested in ideas that seem very nonsensical or very
Mm-hmm.
stupid. In art, you cannot be too sensible and become an artist. You
Mm,
know, the problem with the world is that people always like to be people of common sense.
mm.
In Ghana, they say, "Oh, Uncle Uyenisi, Uncle Besi." But in art, it doesn't work that way. You cannot be too wise. You cannot be you cannot be too wise in that. Sometimes when you have an idea, the
Mm,
idea might be absurd. I imagine the first time that the Wright brothers, thought that they were going to create an airplane. If
yeah.
if they had relied on what people were going to say at the time, they would have never done it.
Mm-hmm.
Or when the first space program took place, the idea of the satellites in space and all that, or when the first telescope was invented, the Hubble telescope, when they proposed creating it and sending it to space, people thought it was a waste of money and it was crazy. But then when they pointed it to a part of the sky which was as tiny as a grain of sand,
Mm,
and they opened the lens for several days, and then later they closed it, and then they formed an image formed, and they
mm-hmm.
checked on it. They looked at the image. They realized that all these of after all these centuries of humankind, all those stars that we thought we were looking at night, they were actually not stars. They were lights coming from millions of years traveling to the Earth, which were actually 100 billion galaxies, not even a star, which contain
Wow.
trillions and trillions of stars. Yeah, so no one would have ever believed. So it's the same idea, or is that same idea or concept that when you conceive of an idea, because when I thought of the airplanes originally, I thought that they could help us boost or create new forms of imagination,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in the north. The area where I created Red Clay, it's a farming community. These
Okay.
people, the kids that grow up in these areas, their parents have been farmers, their grandparents before have been farmers. A lot of them, they grow up, they aspire to be farmers or to be teachers or whatever. But the fact that this space exists, the fact that they wake up every morning and they look across the field and there is an airplane there, already changes the narrative. Already there is a possibility that emerges out of it, that a child wakes up. This now is part of his reality now. He looks at it and he says, "Oh, one day I want to be an astrophysicist." That is important, even if it's just one child that you are able to impact within a society like that.
Mm,
That goes a long way to even turn the trajectory of this space around. And it happens to be the case that because capital accumulates in the big cities, Accra and all that,
yeah.
we always think that that is the place where people are sophisticated and they can relate
Mm,
to ideas like this. But why not create spaces like this in Accra, blah, blah, blah. But why not create spaces like this in the interlands, in the rural areas? Because at the
mm,
end of the day, we never really know which one child is going to be that child that
mm,
would be the next person that would turn the destiny of the country and the world around. So for me, equal opportunity is very important. And
mm.
also the fact that we have to somehow create experiences which would bear fruits in the future that we cannot understand or contain yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big legacies of art always. The fact that an artist decides that I'm going to take these 6 airplanes, I'm going to dismantle them with engineers, I'm going to, I bought them, of course, I'm going to transport them
Mm,
all the way 600 kilometers to Tamale.
mm-hmm.
Once it's in Tamale, I'm going to convert them into classrooms. I'm going to teach children drone technology in them. Like even this weekend, we've been working on robotics and solar technology and all that.
Wow.
Once the airplanes have come into being, the questions that come into bear at that point, it's not the same ordinary questions that we would have been asking if we were in the traditional classroom. If you find kids in a traditional classroom, there are certain specific questions that they are allowed to ask, or in most cases in our society, they are not even allowed to ask questions. But if you're using the airplane as a starting point, as a classroom,
Mm-hmm.
then you can imagine the questions that will even start, that would even they will even begin with. So for me, it's an ideological thing, and it's also the shift in consciousness that these kids who are growing up in these spaces will grow up with a consciousness. That's what's going to turn the destiny or the future of our country around.
That's amazing. That's so impressive. So, did you
Mm.
did you receive any backlash from your parents? Because like I'm thinking from a parent's, perspective that you'd work with school, I mean, now that that you've gotten money and everything, come and I would say just look after us. You are here investing in aircrafts for other people's children, and we don't even see the way out of like your crazy ideas. Did you receive any um like I'll say backlash from your family or from maybe your friends or anything, because they might be thinking, what is Ibrahim doing? You know what I mean? Did you have any form of negativity around you doing this?
No, not
Oh.
from my parents or my family, because
Mm.
they've always known that I'm crazy to begin with, and I'm not. I don't conform. I don't conform. Even when I ask, there are questions I ask at home that most people are like, "Are you crazy? You shouldn't be asking questions like this." So I guess that they somehow understand that I'm on a certain journey, and
Mhm.
also the fact that I was in my 20s when I started working around these ideas, and I've
Okay.
always thought that young people should explore and do things whilst they're young, because once
Mm.
you're of a certain age, you wouldn't have the energy anymore. And secondly,
Mhm.
also, you would have had a complete shift in mindset, because I don't have children now. Once I
Mhm.
have children, obviously my sense of yeah, once you have children, your sense of
Mhm.
priorities might change.
Might
So
change.
for me, it's also very important that whilst I am still alone by myself, I'm
Mhm.
able to make a lot of these very important decisions. So at least even when I bring children into the world, they will
Mhm.
have the same opportunities as the other children that you are creating this thing from. It's a systematic thing that you're trying to create.
That's amazing.
Mm.
You've got most of your artworks in most of the prominent museums, scattered all over the world. But then, why are your works positioned to highlight failures in history? Do you highlight triumphs at all?
Yeah, well, it's a conceptual thing and a political
Okay.
thing. I think that failure has promise, in a sense that when something is not working or something is dead or when something is wrong, we
Mm-hmm.
mostly just look at it as it's dead or it's wrong or it's failed. But actually, when something has failed, there are a lot of constellations that come into play. So, for instance, if you find an old building which has been abandoned, and for let's say 20, 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
when you manage to enter the building, you realize that there are interesting things that happen within the building. Maybe there are certain decays on the wall, there are certain marks on the wall, or maybe there are certain living things in the building. So, for instance, there's an old building, one of the Kwame Nkrumah buildings that I bought, the silo in Tamale. And
Yeah.
when there was a lot of water in it for almost 60 years, and when we pulled out the water and there was sand and we excavated the sand, we realized that there was a colony of bats living inside the building. And I decided to leave these bats living inside the building
Why?
because it's very important that we learn to co-share spaces with different species. So I was looking at these ideas and I was taking photographs of some of these the bats in the spaces. And so I was telling you about this exhibition I have in London in about 3 weeks or so, or 4 weeks. Yeah, and the drawings that I started making with these were these huge photographs of these bats that I was cutting and making these collages and drawings out of them. And these are the same artworks that I am going to sell on the market in the art world. And the money that comes from it is the same money that I'm going to use then now to revive, to renovate the building, or to bring it to a certain point where people can experience it and what exists within it, or to buy other buildings which we can also bring back to life, or to expand the institution, or to create communities around it.
Hmm. That's amazing, because I could tell that you were way ahead, of your community. So how
Yes,
do you make them believe in your vision? Because I know that like you have plans for setting up an art school, like an
yes,
industrial, companies, like in engineering institutions and stuff like that. How do you make your community accept this, major projects? You know what I mean? Because um, like we all know that the northern part is not too developed, as I would say, like the south. So how do you make them come on board with these huge, ambitious um, thinking of yours or projects? Because
yeah,
these are huge projects.
yeah,
Because already you've done the red clay, where we have these 6 aircrafts, being turned into classrooms, and also we have the Nkrumah, Vonleh. I don't know whether maybe I'm, like I'm saying
yes.
it correctly.
Nkrumah Valley.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think people
Nkrumah
want to
Valley.
know. Yes, yeah. Our viewers want to know what the Nkrumah Vonleh means, and why did you buy that building? Why?
Yeah, so that building is very important in terms of looking at Ghana's history post independence. There are so many of them around the country. Actually, they were built in the 60s, around the
Mm-hmm.
time of the building of the Akosombo Dam, because Nkrumah was on a massive industrialization campaign. So, like all Tema, the building of Tema Harbour, the Tema Township, and all the industries, factories around the country in Western region, Sunyani, the Northern region, and all that. A lot of these spaces were abandoned after the coup in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think that it's within our time, within our generation, and we know how politics is actually. That each time a government starts something and then another government
Another
comes, they
government, yeah.
abandon the project and they start something different. So for me, it's very important that at least within our generation, we take responsibilities for the
Mm.
old things that have been lingering around for a long time, particularly the ones from the 60s. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah. Mm.
Okay. So yeah, so it's yeah, those particular buildings came from a very specific era of a certain kind of ideological standpoint,
Mm.
because Nkrumah was very interested in how people, the thinking of people could somehow help the country
Mm-hmm.
escape the condition that it was in, coming from the colonial administration.
Mm.
So for me, I think that is very important that we somehow revive some of these buildings. And then Krumah Volny is one of these silos which was abandoned. Everyone, there was a propaganda that Nkrumah had built it as a political detention centers for his political, yeah, that Nkrumah had built it as a political detention
Mm.
center for his political opponents back in the 60s. So no one wanted to deal with it. But I thought that it was actually quite interesting that people could somehow believe these stories. And the fact that there was a tunnel underneath the building from Accra all the way to Tamale, and Nkrumah could come at any point in time with an army and blah, blah,
Wow.
blah. And that there were ghosts and dwarfs living inside the building. So I was actually very curious about the building. I was like, I really want to see all these things down there. So when there was an opportunity and the state was letting the building go, I was very lucky that I could actually bid for it and then I got it. So I was like, okay, why not excavate the building, exhume, bring it back to life, and let's
Mm.
see what we can do with it, because it's almost like a memory bank. When you enter inside, the kind of stories or things that come into play are not things that are ordinary that we've been familiar with. So I
Wow.
think that's why I was saying that art, that's when art becomes interesting, because it's only an artist who would embark on a project like this, because one might need to become a madman in a way in order to be able to do projects like this. And that's why they always say that artists, we are madmen, because we seem to do the things that society ordinarily wouldn't do.
Okay.
So
I
for
mean,
me, it's important.
it's okay. I mean, talking about these huge projects, these,
Yeah.
like I said, these are expensive projects. So one, I would say that one might think that, oh, maybe Mohammed came from a very, very rich background. How was your background like? Where you are your parents rich? For you to be, doing all these things, because apart from you
Not
selling your
necessarily.
artwork,
My father
you
was
know,
quite
uh huh.
Hello?
Oh, hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you now, Ibrahim. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my father was quite wealthy when we were growing up. So and my father is also a man who is very generous.
Hmm.
He adopted the whole family, raised all his siblings, friends, cousins, kids, and all that. So I grew up in quite a very big family in a very big house. Um, I grew up having the same opportunity as many of the kids that I grew up in with. So I never really had the need of feeling special as a child of
Mm.
like a father or a man who was. My father is a contractor, of someone having money or things like that. So for me, it's always been very important that at the end of the day, we try as much as possible the little that we have to be able to see how we can share it among the people
Mm.
around us, so that at least, because you never know, it's not, when even if you invest so much into your children, it might not be your children who would come to preserve,
Look after you.
it might not be your children who would
Mm.
come to preserve or extend the legacy of your work.
Mm.
It might be other people. So for me, it's always, I've always had this idea as a child growing up in this family
Mm.
to be able to think beyond just the idea of the blood.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, talking about your background. So now we at least we know that you had some support, as a child growing up.
Yes. Yes.
But then
Yes.
um, I'll say that like we've seen some of your artworks, and you being the founder of SCCA. Viewers want to know what SCCA means and how you came about with that, and also some of your
Okay.
like your projects. Because now we've got the red clay, which we've already talked about, but then we just want
Yes.
to know about the SCCA, please. I mean, if you can actually take us through what the SCCA means and the
Okay.
inspiration behind it, please. Yeah.
Okay. So STCA stands for Savannah Center for Contemporary Art, and I started working on it in 2014 when I started earning my first, when I earned my first major money from a work that I sold in London to a collector in 2014. And I decided I'm going to build this studio that I've always
Mm.
wanted to do since I left Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I decided that I was going to build a SCCA in 2014 when I sold my
Mm.
first major work to a collector in London. So we started. And at the time, it was meant to be just a studio space to work in Tamale, to be able to produce my artwork. And but later on, I realized that it could be more than just a studio. There is an artist, an older artist, Mr. Kofi Dawson. May he
Mm,
so rest in peace. He passed
good.
on yesterday, actually. He
Oh.
was the first artist. He's 81 year. He was 81 years old when he passed. But I used to see him all the time. Like he's one of these older artists that was at every art exhibition in Accra, and some of my colleagues used to engage him and all that. And at some point, I had a conversation with him about doing
We do apologize for these network issues. This is way out of our control because, yeah. Ibrahim, yeah.
yeah,
Just like I said, we have all the patience for you tonight. So, yeah, we do understand.
yeah, so basically, I when I started a conversation with him, I realized that it was very, yeah, it was very important for me to hello,
Oh, hi.
hello.
Oh, hi. Ibrahim, yeah, we can hear you clearly now. We can hear you.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Ibrahim. We can hear you
Yeah,
now. We can hear you.
yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry.
That's
So,
okay.
yeah, 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 sorry. What were we talking about before even?
ah,
Yeah,
we're
the
talking about the
frustration of
air
being,
pressure, cool down. Like we were talking about the SCCA, the whole idea about that. Um, you can you hear me now, Ibrahim?
yeah, I can hear you. It's
Good.
just that the
Okay.
network is breaking so much. I wonder. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. You were talking about the SCCA, project that you are now that you started here with your first bulk of money. Yeah, I think that's what you were talking about.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you're talking about your SCCA and
Yes.
project.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. Dawson, when I spoke to him around the time, I realized that there was a need to somehow create a space that could allow for the older generation, for us to connect the works of the older generation to the younger generation.
Mhm.
So, hence, my father is a contractor. He was very excited about me even having the idea to move to Tamale to stay here and have a studio. So he decided to Yeah. So my father decided to do this space for me pro bono. So
Mm-hmm.
all I needed to do was to work to raise the money for the materials and the labor. So we started working on this.
Viewers, please be patient with us. The network from Ghana is a bit not stable, but we'll try and finish this interview. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We started working on this. We started working on it, and as time went on, I realized that it could actually become something more than it was. So
Mm.
I decided to expand it into red clay, into developing the studio. That's when I started having these ideas of the airplanes and trains and all kinds of different things, because I thought that there was a huge potential within it and what it could provide to the generation.
That's amazing. I mean, because of the network, like I wouldn't want to take too much of your time. Hi, Ibrahim. Mm-hmm.
Maybe when I come to London next time when we meet in person, we can
That I
actually
mean,
do this
no
better,
worries at all. But
because this
we've
is
got. I know it's so
yeah. I'm
frustrating,
always
and
so
it's
embarrassed with
frustrating.
the internet
No, no,
in
no,
this
no,
place.
no. Please don't feel embarrassed because we have, young people who are on the line listening. So I don't want you to end tonight's interview. Honestly, I don't want them to feel disappointed. So, they've sent me a message that, Auntie, we are listening. So please carry on.
Okay.
I mean, yes. So don't feel disappointed. No, no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I thought that there was potential actually in it. So we started working on the first show that we had was in 2019 of
Mm,
Mr. Kofi Dawson's artworks, and it was over 60 years of art that he had made, but a lot of the work no one had actually really seen before.
mm,
So I engaged students from the university who went to his house, to his studio, to help him
mm.
revive his works, to paint new works. And there are so many things that happened within the period. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Bernard Akwe Jackson, he helped to put the exhibition together. He curated it, and we opened the exhibition. It was actually really fantastic. We did so many workshops around it. Mr. Dawson came to Tamale a few times, and we organized workshops where he painted with kids within Tamale, and it's something.
We have people actually sending in comments from Nana Ayi. So far, he said, "I like Ibrahim's art and how he works with architectural pieces as his backdrop for the Jute Sack installations. I love the Great Hall in National Theatre installations. We look forward to his next installation in Ghana." And I have here also from Naomi Asani, also saying, "That's right, the children are the future." I've got also from Jemima Jump also saying, "That's right, young people should explore." I've got one also from Eddie Tabo Moriko, also saying, "Very interesting project." And I've got the comments keeps on coming. So you know uh, I don't want you to end this interview, please, because otherwise you disappoint a lot of people. Please,
Hello.
Yeah, yeah. Hello. um, Now, uh, why is the part? I mean, is the partnership with architecture and cityscapes a part of your
Hello.
storytelling? Yeah, yeah. Hello. Can you hear me now, Ibrahim? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Ibrahim? And I've got Benjamin Jeshron also saying this network. um, I've got Naomi Asani also saying, wow, that's creativity. Okay. Okay. Ibrahim,
Yes.
yes, I know you travel a lot. And I think I chanced upon one of your videos where you were running workshops, you
Hmm.
know, um, I think in one of the Western countries. What is the feeling like? What is the
Oh,
feeling like
well,
when you see the joy, like on the faces of children? Um, like after seeing your artwork, what is the feeling like? Being able to impact children. How do you feel when you run, workshops and you see the joy on the faces of children? How do you feel?
well, I guess it feels great actually to be able to share your ideas or yeah, it feels great actually to be able to share your ideas and experiences that you've accumulated over the years with younger people. I guess for me, it always brings me a lot of happiness because we spend so much time trying to build ourselves and our ideas and our capacities. So I want to be able to at least share that with another generation that would understand it and practice it even in a much more better way than I did when I was their age. So I've done quite a number of workshops and I've given so many lectures around the world actually. But it's always very exciting when you have to try as much as possible to break your ideas down for
Mhm,
children. It
mhm.
helps you actually even in understanding your own ideas because sometimes you take a lot of things for granted, but when you have to break it down to the very yeah, when you have to break things down to a very minute detail, it seems really exciting actually. I think
Mhm.
so. So for me, it's always brought me a lot of joy. And I without that, I don't think I would have come this far even as an artist, actually.
Wow. So your focus is on the younger generation, isn't it? Your focus is on the children.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Wow. Okay, with that, so I think you didn't talk too much about the SCC because of the network,
Yeah.
breakup. But since you are the founder of that, if you can just go back a little bit and just lecture us a little bit about the SCCA thing, please. Hello, viewers. I think I'll be apologizing throughout tonight's program, but there's nothing that I can do. But uh, you know, Benjamin, I would say Benjamin Joshua is saying Ghana Network is not helping, but the interview is becoming interesting. Yes, I perfectly agree with you, Ben. And Ben, continues to write. This is a great guy. I'm really enjoying the conversation. And he goes on to say that we have to have him back another time. That's amazing. Uh, Well, you can send in your questions and your comments if you have any, any question at all for Ibrahim. Just make it ready, and maybe he'll be so glad to answer any of your questions that you have in mind. Welcome back, Ibrahim. Welcome back.
Hello.
I mean, yes, we see your work in a very, very open space, and it's so prominent. So tonight, I just want to find out: is the partnership with architecture and cityscapes a part of your storytelling, or just by coincidence?
Oh no,
Especially
it's
when
part of it.
we watch your the Great Hall, you know, uh, I'll say exhibition. Was it like a deliberate thing that you thought, oh, I can just change this whole building with just sacks and stuff like that. So I just want to know: is the partnership of your work, um, with cityscapes, a part of your storytelling, or just pure coincidence?
No, no, it's very deliberate actually.
It's
It's
deliberate.
part of the
Okay.
whole story. Yeah,
Mm,
because there is a relationship between the materials and the building in itself. So
mm,
for me, that's I'm very much interested in that relationship that is created because when you put the sacks on the building, it takes the form of the building. And when
mm,
the wind blows, it also reveals part of the building. And also when it takes the form of the building, it changes the shape of the sack because ordinarily most times the sack might be flat, but when it goes on top of a building, it might take the form of the building. So I'm very much interested in what happens when you have onions in a sack or cocoa or whatever, and it's no longer inside, and you sew those same sacks together to form a much bigger one, and it goes on to cover a building. The
mm.
projections on the building and all that, how it affects the shape of the sack. It's all very political because all these things have political commentaries within them in relation to art itself and also in relation to other things. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So now, that's okay. um, what is your inspiration behind this jute sack thing? Because most of your artworks are, done with jute sacks. Why the jute sacks? I have Nanaya Nefwa also saying, I find your creative processes and thinking fascinating, and I greatly admire your works. That's also someone watching live of live from YouTube, and she goes, "I find your creative processes and thinking fascinating, and I greatly admire your works." Welcome back, Ibrahim. Look, I've got one of your fans saying she finds your creative processes and thinking fascinating, and she greatly admires your work. Yeah, so that's also like another fan of yours. Um, what were we saying? The jute sack
Yes.
inspiration. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I find that very interesting that when the material takes the form of the building, at least it's it brings the building to it brings the building alive in a very different
Mm,
sense. And for me, also the fact that people see a building all the time, but they never really think about it because when we see a building, we just see a space that we can occupy,
mm,
but or a space that we can use, but we never think about the labor processes that goes into the
mhm,
building, the history of the building in terms of the form, the columns that come together to make the building and all that. So
mm.
for me, I've always thought that by covering these buildings, it allows us to be able to reflect upon history in itself.
Mm.
So architecture is very historical in terms of what it does for civilization. So I think that the jute sack in itself, in terms of what was once contained within it as the cocoa, because in Ghana, if you look at our history in the 20th century, mostly Ghana was the largest producer of cocoa in the world. And a lot of money that was made out of cocoa was what was used in building the Temamoto Way, like some of these massive buildings around the
Mm.
independence era. So for me, I'm very much interested in the connections between the content of the bag in terms of the cocoa and also like the building that exists that we normally don't make those connections. So when the jute sack at the point of being discarded after charcoal comes back into laying upon the building, it allows us to be able to connect time in a very different way.
Okay, since you use, things around you, I'm thinking, especially coming from Tamale, you have other natural, stuff, especially your kente that you have there, your cotton.
Yeah.
Um, why don't you use them? But then just jute sack. What
I've used very different materials actually. So the
material?
smoked material I have used
Okay.
actually in some works in the
Mm-hmm.
past. Yeah, I also collected a lot of the smokes back some years ago because I wanted to make these artworks similarly to the jute sacks, but I never did them on a very large scale because of the colors. I mostly I like to make works that are very subtle. So sometimes when you're working on things like that and you come to realize that it's very strong, you can almost see it from anywhere. I like to produce works that are very subtle and very quiet, but yet when you see them, they have a very strong presence. So
Mm.
when the smoke that has so much design happening within it, so I mostly use it in creating like smaller size works. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the very monumental works, I mostly like working with the jute bags because I think that they are so they are very subdued. It's when something is very subdued and
Mm-hmm.
you work with it, it allows you to be able to make a very monumental statement without it being so loud. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, now, let's move on to, art education in Ghana. How do you see art education in Ghana, and how has it progressed?
Well, it's shifted quite a lot since the colonial days, because back in those days, people were not so much encouraged to think. They were only allowed to produce what they saw. So these days, you really have to use your imagination and you have to stretch the way you think about things. The conceptual framework of an artwork is very important. Of course, when you go down to the secondary school level and others, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of like the curriculum and all that. People, art, there are certain art forms like photography and other things which are still not within the curriculum when you go to the secondary school levels. So a lot of students leave the universities and then leave secondary school and they come to the university to study art, and they are not so open-minded. And also, still within the university system, you have a lot of people who went to study art at a time when
Mm.
things were still very conservative. So they don't really allow for their students to explore much. But every now and then you find professors also who are very interested in somehow giving their students all the freedom to be able to explore. So for me, I think that it's very important that we somehow open up the system or introduce new forms of curriculum and also new forms of experimentation.
Mm.
Allow for art students, engineering students, architecture students to be able to borrow courses and to be able to study things, because
Mm.
at the end of the day, the most important thing is to be very open minded about the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an artist, there is nothing that prevents you from doing a course in medicine to allow you to understand the human body or even diagnosis or things like that, because an artist can find inspiration from anywhere. An artist can find inspiration in space. An artist can find inspiration in the ground, in a building, and even in if I could find inspiration in charcoal sacks, which are nearly discarded in the market, how much more in photography or in architecture or whatever. So for me, I think that a lot has been done, particularly me coming from KNUST, from the arts department. because there were a lot of professors there who really did so much work to somehow turn the system around. So it gave me a lot of hope to think that we could actually, if we invest a lot into education and sustainable curriculums and models, it could somehow even produce much better artists and much better practitioners. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, now with your influence, especially being so influential now in Africa, don't you think you can, add your voice in terms of how we structure our curriculum?
Yes, no, certainly. I engage with a lot of people all the time. Interestingly enough, the work that I do is within the new curriculum, even in the primary schools, the basic schools. So I always have teachers write me on Facebook asking me for um, in like lesson they ask me questions and I answer. They use that to teach their students. Some of them even ask me if they can come to Tamale to see the studio and to for their students to spend time to understand the work that I do properly, things like that. And also when I have time, mostly I travel around communities and I go and do workshops with kids in basic schools and all that, because I know that it's very important. Once you're able to share your work with them firsthand, it allows them to actually understand the significance of what we do on a different level. So, yeah,
Okay, look, the reason why I'm asking you this is
yeah,
if your artwork had not been sold
yeah.
and you being offered this huge amount and also being a renowned, visual
Mm.
artist, do you think you would have been, properly understood? Because, like we all got to hear about Ibrahim Mahama. Uh, as soon as your works, got sold, and the amount just came out, and we realized, I mean, who is this guy, or who is this guy that just one of his artworks just got sold for this amount? Do you think in Ghana still we do appreciate art, or it's like um, we are still in that process of nurturing who are artists are? Do you think
Yeah.
really understand or appreciate who artists are, and for that matter
Well,
a visual artist like you?
yeah, I guess people are still struggling to understand what it
Yeah.
means for someone to be an artist.
Hmm.
I don't think it's bad. I think that it's a journey actually, because some years ago, an artist like me wouldn't have existed. The conditions were just not right for
Hmm.
an artist like me to be. If I was born 20 if I was born 20 years ago, or even if I was born 20 years earlier than I was born, I don't think I would have become the artist that I am today. If I was born 50 years before, I wouldn't have been. If I was born
Mm.
maybe much in the future, I would have become a different artist. I
Yeah.
think that the time that I was born in was just right enough. Just before the internet and after the internet, with all like new, like radical ideas like Google, Facebook, everything emerging. So you find yourself at a point where history is in a form of making. There are older people who've also for a long time lived in the older system where art was very uh, yeah, streamlined in a way, and they found ways in which they could escape that and then create new models in which young people could learn from. So for us, we're trying to see how we can somehow develop upon that. We understand that the Ghanaian society, or in Africa, people are quite conservative. Even in the West, you find a lot of people who are also very conservative about art. But the fact is that they have taken so many years to develop art forms and also like museum experiences and all that to the point that it is today. But Africa yet is yet to do that. We are not very much known for investing into infrastructure. And
Mm.
social infrastructure is very important. Like we need to build museums, we need to build community centers, cultural institutions. We need to invest into sports. We need to invest into research and scientific experiments, things like that. So it's something that is coming up gradually within this generation that we find ourselves in. So for me, I think that just being in a privileged position where you've been able to develop your work or your ideas to a point where they are valued at certain amount should give us the should give us the confidence and the courage to be able to do more, to be able to build more things, and to be able to establish spaces that can allow our society to even open up further than it was
Mm.
before.
That's amazing. Talking about that, do you think, as a nation or as a people, do you think we have prioritized and also utilized art education very well? And do you
I
think
don't think
we
so.
really invested into art? Set aside
Oh,
enough investment into art.
no, I don't think so.
Uh,
Even the National Museum, which was being built by Nkrumah, has been abandoned since the 1960s, since 1966. Um, yeah, so if you see the state of the arts anywhere, even when you see like artworks which are in the collection of the state, they are in very deplorable conditions. And even in the field, and mostly when people are thinking about art, entertainment, they're always thinking about music and film, but
mm,
poetry, the visual arts, and all these are very important. Even when it comes to awards relating to the art, it's always in relation to music and film. But I think that visual art is very important. I think it's also because of the way it's understood. Because when people think about art, they think that it's something that you just buy to decorate your house, or
mm.
but it's not that. And the kind of work that I do, it's not something that you can buy to decorate your house because it looks very strange. You wouldn't even want to it in your house. But
Definitely,
this
definitely.
work that is more that is institutional. So
Mm,
there is a difference in that an artist produces a practice that is institutionalized in a way
mm,
that it is meant for the collective, it is meant for all of us, versus an artist just making a drawing because a so-called beautiful painting because he knows that someone can buy it for uh, $100 or $200, and then he can get something to buy to eat. But for me, I'm more or less interested in making work that
mm,
somehow allows us to be able to rethink of art in itself. So that's
mm.
where the value in itself comes in.
Okay.
So artists or artists in terms of music, filmmakers, and all that really have to think on that level of making work that is not just to satisfy the public,
Mhm,
for them to be able to make money from, but to be able to make work that is enduring, that would even would further change the mindset of the
mm,
consumers to even think about this work in a much more extended manner. When they watch a film or listen to music or see the work of a musician, they should realize that, oh, I, I didn't think musicians did this, or I didn't think filmmaking was about this. That's
mm.
when we can actually influence our society to take whatever we do seriously.
Okay. I mean, I'll say that, like most of your works are stationed in Tamale. Do you have any mentoring plans, online, especially kids watching you online now who might be fascinated by your work and might, actually want you to mentor them? Do you have any
Yes.
mentoring plans? Or
Yeah, like my Instagram, Facebook is always open, and people write me a lot of messages. Sometimes there are people who've come to Tamale to stay here for a few days. We've had conversations. There are a lot of young people I've mentored, people who even within the city who just write to you and say they would like to spend some time with you to see your working processes, your thoughts. There are people that I have conversations with online all the time, interviews, Zoom sessions where we just have conversations, exploring ideas here and there. I've done that for many different schools in the UK, both teenagers and also like younger people, and then also university students
that's
um,
amazing.
in America. Yeah, yeah, I've done most. Yeah, the last one I did was with this a community-based school. It was in London. I think there were a couple of black students and also some white students. Yeah, so for me, it's very important because what we are doing is not just going to stay with us alone. It's going to trickle down to other people,
Mm,
and that's what I've been trying to do all this time. How do we develop ourselves to a point that we can become positive influences on people around us, whether they are young or old. But mostly when they are young, it's most exciting because it means that we're going to have people, more responsible people in the future, and that's what the world needs. The world needs more responsible people.
mm,
So if you have the opportunity to mentor or to guide other younger people to become better people, why not?
Ah, that's really impressive. I mean, since your attention is so much, on the young, ones, how do you nurture creative minds? Because I have a feeling not every child that comes to your, gallery, will end up being an artist. But then, how do you nurture these creative minds?
There is so much in the space, in the gallery space, particularly when you come to red clay, where the airplanes are.
Hmm.
We have a lot of archival materials there dating back to 130 years or more.
Wow.
We have materials from the railways, photographs, blueprints. We have uh, I have airplane engines aside the airplanes. I have like parts of train engines. I'm trying to collect also these old trains to come to bring here to also transform them into classrooms.
You're joking,
Um,
old friends.
yes, I've been working on it for a long time, but it's very slow. So I hope that it can happen. And then if it happens, I would like to be able to do this project in Accra, like in Accra, Tamale, and Takrade, secondly, to be specific. So there are things that I've been working on, and all these things, like we have cinema spaces in this in the red clay. We have library spaces. So there are so many materials, and when I'm traveling, I buy a lot of books, like books on architecture, on film, engineering, medicine, whatever. So when people come to the space, there's so much that they get to experience: the history of textiles, the history of furniture. Recently, I traveled to Insawam to because I heard there was a man there who sells old furniture, mostly from the 20th century. And I went and I discovered a lot of old furniture, which I bought. And also, I got a gramophone. Myself, I had never seen a gramophone before. So I bought one and I brought it to Red Clay. So even yesterday, when we had a group of kids coming from the village, I played a gramophone for them. And none of them, myself, this is like the first week in my life I'm experiencing a gramophone. So I'm trying to share this idea with kids, playing a musical instrument that you wind and is playing, and no one knows what technology is working within it. Yeah, so things like that. So when they see all these things, it somehow allows their mind. It's the mind is very complicated. When a child is growing up, and you give when you give him or her a lot of information, it really makes the muscles in the brain very it makes it very complex. Like it twists the muscles here and there, so that when the muscles become free when they are growing up, it becomes very flexible for them to be able to think. If you can experience all these things as a child and make certain connections between drone technology and airplanes, and then let's say artworks, videos, cinema experiences, things that within 2 or 3 generations ago it didn't exist. And suddenly you're growing up. Obviously, you're thinking about the world around you. It's not going to be the same thinking as your father or your grandfather. So that, in a way, allows the mind to be a lot more open in information that it receives and also information that it can create. And for me, that's when it becomes interesting, because you don't need that person to become an artist, but at least when that person is growing up, the level of responsibility that they're going to have to
Hmm.
themselves and also to the
Yeah.
children that they're going to have. If their children one day tell them that they want to become artists, they're not going to laugh and say this is ridiculous. They'll be like, "Oh, that's interesting. When I was a child growing up,
Hmm.
this there was this institution, Red Clay. That's what shaped us. Blah blah blah. So why not? Why not? You can do it." But it has to start from somewhere.
Huh, Ibrahim, you are just full of ideas. And I
Oh,
don't know how you walk around with all these ideas. I don't know. Yes, I don't know. You are so fully loaded that I think I just need a whole day to sit down with you. Honestly, this thing is um, so in Ghana now. I mean, how do we increase art and cultural awareness? I think
well,
we're almost done. We are almost
yeah,
done.
the government has to invest into that heavily, actually. And also, I think one way is the government investing heavily into it, and secondly is also young people taking responsibility. and also invest like when whatever field or practice they find themselves in, to invest within that, within the field and sector by themselves. If you're a musician and you're making money from your work, I think it's important to somehow invest into building music studios for younger people to experiment with. I guess the problem is always that when people become successful at whatever they do, even if they are going to influence people, they want to be able to influence people in the same genre as them. They want to be able to create other people like themselves. But there is no point in that. Through your work, there are other people who can emerge who are even not in the same genre as you. They could, yeah, you could inspire people in the same field who do very different things. So for me, I think that by us collectively investing into both the human infrastructure, developing the human infrastructure, and also physical infrastructure, we can go a very long way to somehow create a generation of practitioners who would really evolve whatever practices that they find themselves in, to a point which would be a force to reckon with.
That's amazing. As a storyteller of our culture, what do you see on the horizon?
Well, it will be very difficult to see
Mhm.
beyond the horizon. It's just endless possibilities.
Endless
I'm very much
possibility.
interested in the ideas of space explorations, black holes, and the void, and all that. So, the idea of the horizon has always been very important to me. And for me, it's always been a place of not fully understanding, but still investing so much into it. We don't need to be able to foresee the future or every bit of it, but we need to have an understanding of it. And yeah, like we need to believe in the future without actually knowing what it's going to become in order to be able to invest in the generations that are yet to emerge. And if we want to see everything before we do anything, we would not be able to get anything significant done within our lifetime, and which will trickle down to many generations that are yet to emerge. So for me, I think that we just need to cultivate this a sense of belief in the future. There are so many people. We live in a society where people are very religious. People believe that people would go to church and they would believe in the body of Christ and everything. They would take the communion, but yet when it comes down to thinking about the future, they become very conservative about it. So I think that we need to open up our minds about the future.
That's amazing. Huh. Do you know what? We've got a lot of comments. I mean, now coming in. From Abnatechi, she goes, for a young Ghanaian to have broken through in arts is so impressive. Ghanaian parents should give their children the chance to do more and explore. And I've got one from Benjamin, Jeshurun, and he also goes, "This man is fully loaded." And he goes on to say, "You need a whole day with him, Nana." And I've got another one also, all the way from America, Patricia Wusu Aboa also saying, "Opportunity to experience variety opens diverse instances for one to choose." That's amazing. And he goes, "Inspiring young man indeed." Ah, I wish, this interview will go on and go, because I've got a lot of questions that I wanted to ask, but because of, the network, we just end, like
Yes,
tonight's discussion on. So I see you in September, where we can sit down
yes,
face to face
yes,
and talk more.
exactly.
And,
Yes.
like, yeah, before you go, as a well accomplished artist, what would you say to other young upcoming artists and who look up to you and are striving to make a mark? What do you want to say to them?
Well, I think that they should be patient, and they should just believe in whatever they do, and they shouldn't try to be too smart about the world. They should leave an open mind to be able to explore and do some things. There's so much in the world which we haven't seen or we haven't experienced yet, and you shouldn't go into the world wanting to do the things that have already been done. I guess that we should have a sense of curiosity, and we should also have a sense of courage about the world. And moreover, we should learn to be responsible. You are not just responsible for yourself, but whatever decisions that you make is going to affect the lives of other people. So
Mm,
whether good or bad, if it's bad, it's going to have a bad impact. If it's good, it's going
mm,
to have a better impact.
mm,
So if you realize that you are someone that wants to do something, why not just invest time into it to develop it properly, so that when it yields good seeds and good fruits, at
mm.
least the society at large is going to benefit from it. So I think that young people should first and foremost be patient and have a sense of belief and courage, and through that, the universe is just endless. There's so much. Like, I never imagined that I would be this kind of an artist. Or if 10 years ago, when in art school, if anyone told me that I would make millions from
Ah,
my work and I would invest it into building like institutions and like teaching children, or giving lectures, or trying to build a school, or making artworks that were very strange, I would have said no, it's not possible. But at least you have a sense of belief that you want to do something. You
yeah.
want to do something with your life and something great. So just follow it religiously, and then also just with a sense of patience and dignity, and yeah, and one is, yeah, beautiful things will happen.
And also, what do you say to African parents? At least your parents were understanding. What
Yeah,
about the parents who see art dear? Why art? The doctors
but
we
why not?
fear, art. So, I mean, just one word to African parents who think arts. Please don't go to don't go into arts. I mean, what can you tell our African parents?
Yeah, but why
Because
not
at
art?
least
Because
we've seen what you've brought
yeah,
to Africa, and also for Ghana, and
yeah,
the glory that you've brought to us and
yeah,
everything. I mean,
yeah,
just say something to African parents.
yeah. No, I guess art is broad, and artists are more or less people who are here to propose new ways in which we can see and experience the world. They are not just people who are going to make drawings or sculptures or whatever. Art is an attitude. So if a child decides that they want to become an artist, I think they should let them explore, because we need artists to be able to do all the things that we need in this world. Without an artist, you cannot get your product design or
Mm,
packaging. Your milk comes to you, and sometimes people buy things not because they really want them, but it's because of the way the packaging has been done, or the
mm,
way it
mm,
appears to be. Yeah, the clothes that we wear, the buildings that we live in,
mm,
the airplanes that we sit in, the trains that we travel in, all these things are worked on by artists. Of course, artistic impressions, engineering comes into being and all that. So artists don't work in isolation. So someone might decide to start by being an artist, but end up being, let's say, an engineer or a doctor. I have a lot of friends who are there is a friend of mine in Italy. He's a medical doctor. He's a surgeon actually, but
mm.
when he's not in the theater, he is an artist, a full-time artist. He makes
Wow.
really beautiful artworks. And I also have art friends who studied art but now are engineers or architects or whatever. So art is just an attitude and a way of life. So if your child says he wants to become an artist, it's a path. So they might end up being in some other field. They might end up being doctors or physicists or whatever it may lead them to. I started with art, but I ended up buying airplanes and being interested in buildings and things like that. So it's not just art is not as simple as we are made to understand.
Mm, yeah.
It's based on an older curriculum. Art in the 20th century is not the same as art within the 21st century. So I think parents need to start with an open mind and at least believe in their children enough to let them explore whatever they want them to be. And I'm sure that they would never regret it.
Oh, thank you so much. But I'd like to just put it to you that you were a genius, because I mean, the way you think and see things is way out of this world. And I would like to say a very big thank you for taking time off, out of your busy schedule to be on the Inside View. And
Oh,
I've
thank you
got,
for having me.
one lady that I just can't just afford not to read her comments.
Okay.
She's Jemima Jumpo. Also,
Yeah.
also in London, she goes, indeed, there's so much we haven't experienced yet. Believe in what you do and invest time in whatever you want to do. Thank you so much, Jemima.
Okay.
And on that note, I would like to say a very big thank you to all viewers, around the world who took some time to be with us on tonight's episode. I would like to say thank you, and also to parents out there. We should let our children explore, and in so doing, I would say, look, they become better people. I mean, who knows? Because, just like our own dear brother Ibrahim started, he started by drawing, like as a form of escape. But today he's here making millions and also giving back to society. And that's the thing that really thrills me. Everything that, he gets, it's just a matter of, I would say, I'm just giving back to um, to children, and you don't see a lot of millionaires actually doing that. So on that note, we should all commend Ibrahim Mahama for what he does, and also he will be in London. So if you're in London, and hopefully on the 14th of September, if you have time,
Yes.
just meet us in in
At the White Cube Gallery in Bermondsey.
yes, in Bermondsey, and
Yeah.
he's going to have a massive exhibition
Yeah.
there, and
Yes.
I'll, urge all Ghanaians in Ghana to just throw our weight behind him and see him personally, and also ask all the questions that you
Yes.
might want to ask him, and I think you have all the time to answer you.
Yes.
So on that note, thank you so much, and thank you for
Thank you.
tuning in. Thank you. So Mahama, please.